Thank you everyone for being here and participating today in this Governing Council orientation. We are thrilled that you're here, and we're very thankful for your service as being a governing counselor. I do, as we get started, want to ask everyone to please mute your microphone. We welcome your questions and we encourage you to ask them throughout, and you can put them in the chat, and we will be checking the chat and responding as appropriate. At this time, and we will have time at the end for questions. So please don't hesitate to ask now, place your question in the chat or follow up. At this time, I want to welcome the Executive Director of APHA and the Secretary of the Governing Council, our very own Dr. Georges Benjamin. And so I am going to pin Georges and spotlight him for everyone and welcome him joining us today.
Aaron, how are you doing? And let me just say hi to all the governing councils on this call, and just remind you that you know, this is absolutely an amazing association that we have, and you represent you know, our governance, our overarching governance for the association. And there is just really so many neat things that this association has done over the years. This is, of course, our 150th anniversary year, and we're doing things each and every month to celebrate it. I hope that every one of you will be able to be there in person at the annual meeting this year in Boston. Boston, as you may know, is the city of our founding. And so we'll have I think, a really good opportunity to really just get together, refresh, get to know one another. As you know, we had our annual meeting in the fall last year as a hybrid meeting in Denver. This year is going to be very different. It's going to be basically a face-to-face meeting. We'll be capturing components of it. And then a week later, we'll kind of be doing a delayed broadcast of our meeting for people who can't make the full meeting, but are willing to, you know, register for about a third to a little less than half of the meeting will be captured in real time. So we look forward to participating. Your part of that, of course, is that you'll be involved with this in the usual way we do the Governing Council. So we look forward to really supporting you. Courtney is our main staff for the Governing Council, does our governance. As Aaron said, I do serve as a secretary, and the resources of the association are there to support you in everything that you do. So Aaron, thank you very much, and I'll stay on and listen as long as I can.
Great. Thank you so much, Georges, for joining us. We're going to share the slides once more, and hopefully, and we'll get that up. And can I just get confirmation that we are again seeing the PowerPoint?
Not yet.
Not yet? Uh-oh. What about now?
Yes.
Great. Thank you all so much. So thank you, Georges, for welcoming us, and we'll now move along. So apologies for the bit of us delayed start getting things together. Courtney is unable to join us, and she normally handles some of the back end logistics for us. But so today what we're really going to be focusing on is an orientation to the Governing Council role. This includes the APHA membership structure, the composition of the Governing Council, the role of the Executive Board, functions of the Governing Council, the policy process, opportunities for Governing Council engagement, as well as, you know, opportunities for questions and opportunities for questions at the end. This meeting is being recorded, and so it will be available to you early next week to watch, as well as for those who were unable to join us today. There are a couple of links we want to direct you to. The first one of these is the Governing Council page. You can find this by following this link as this link here. As Georges has highlighted, this is our 150th anniversary, and we are excited to be celebrating it this year. And we're thrilled that you'll be serving the Governing Council on this important milestone. I encourage you, we will generally send out announcements when there has been something that has changed on the website, but this website does exist and it has all the information. It can serve as a kind of a one-stop shop for all of the information you may need. Or if you're looking for something that we previously sent out in an email and you can't find the email, you can access it here. As we continue on, it'd be great if we can get to know one another. So in the chat box, please provide us your name, your member unit you're representing, and where you're calling in from or where you're joining us from. My name is Aaron Guest, and I am the Speaker of the Governing Council. I was elected in October 2020 with my term ending in October 2023. I'm calling in right now from Phoenix, Arizona, where I live. In my day job, I'm an assistant professor of aging here within the Center for Innovation in Healthy and Resilient Aging. Most of my work has been with the Aging and Public Health, Environment, and LGBTQ caucus. I encourage you to reach out to me if you have any questions. You can access my email here. The role of the speaker, I think, is critical for us to go over. And really, for the speaker, as the speaker, we focus on developing the meeting agenda. We open and guide the process and proceedings of the Governing Council meetings when we are in session. We ensure that I ensure the meeting agenda and time are followed, monitor and ensure respectful debate, and announce voting results. You can think of me as somewhat as the cruise activity director when the Governing Council is in session. I work to keep things moving and to keep counselors engaged when we're not in session. We are lucky to have a wonderful staff liaison in Courtney Taylor. Courtney is generally the one who will contact you from governance@apha.org or through her own email. And so keep an eye out for emails from her, as she generally will communicate all of the critical information that comes from APHA to the governing counselors. I now want to transition and talk a little bit about APHA structure, because I think it's important to know where we sit within the overall structure of APHA, because it can be confusing. The Governing Council is, of course, one of the governance bodies of APHA, and when in session, it is the highest governance body of the association. The Governing Council is composed of members from the 53 state and regional affiliates, the 32 sections, one SPIG and forum, the Student Assembly, as well as ex officio representatives from the past presidents, the section chairs, the caucuses, boards, and standing committees. In total, the Governing Council serves the 50,000 plus members of the American Public Health Association and our state affiliates. The executive board and the officers of the association are elected by the Governing Council and serve as the governance body of the association when the Governing Council is not in session. This is important because, of course, we're in session twice a year, so items may come up before the executive board, and they're empowered to take actions. We do want to highlight, of course, that not all caucus and regional affiliate members may be APHA members, but they do have representation. To break it down a little bit more, APHA membership structure is composed of sections, and we have about 32 sections now, and you can see them here. They include items such as aging and public health, the environment section, epidemiology, mental health, occupational health and safety, which can be thought of as broader careers, but also topical groups such as physical activity, HIV/AIDS, pharmacy, law, and ethics. These sections are represented on the Governing Council based on a formula that ensures each section has at least 2 representatives, with additional representatives assigned based on the section size. The APHA membership structure also includes SPIGs. SPIGs are special interest groups, and they're an open group of self-selected members from APHA that share common occupational discipline or program area interest and are opting to select no primary section affiliation. Currently, we have one SPIG, and it is the One Health SPIG, formerly the Veterinarian Public Health SPIG. APHA is also composed of 5 forums. Forums are membership units composed of APHA members working on specific issues that crosses disciplinary disciplinary boundaries, our section and SPIG boundaries. As I said, currently we have 5 represented, engaged. These are breastfeeding, cancer, genomics, human rights, and trade and health. And I encourage you to become involved in forums as you think about your own interest. Forums are a great way to connect with individuals across disciplines and across sections within APHA. We also, within APHA, have a structure called the Student Assembly. The Student Assembly represents the students of public health. And the chair of the Student Assembly is an ex officio voting member of the Executive Board and Governing Council. And the Student Assembly also has representation in the form of a set number of governing counselors. The Student Assembly is probably one of our more active groups, as we all know, and we're thrilled to have those 7,000 or so students represented in APHA and the future of public health represented in that way. And I encourage you to all reach out to the Student Assembly if you haven't already. And then we also, within the APHA membership structure, have the state and local affiliates. Currently, there are 49 states plus Northern California, Southern California, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico represented, and each affiliate has 1 voting member of the Governing Council as an affiliate, And then finally, we have the caucuses. The APHA currently has 17 caucuses, and these are organizations composed of at least 25 APHA members, and membership has traditionally been based on an identity or topical issue. So we have our, this includes our first caucus, the Black Caucus of Health Workers, which just celebrated their 50th anniversary a few years ago. The Latino Caucus, the LGBTQ Health Caucus, the Men's Caucus, the Women's Caucus, the Latino Caucus, and the Asian and Pacific Islander Caucus, as well as topical caucuses such as the Caucus on Homelessness, Peace Caucus, Socialist Caucus, Vietnam Caucus, which I believe is now the Veterans Caucus, having recently rebranded. And they serve within the Governing Council with voice, but no vote. So let's talk a little, now that we've kind of talked about the parts that go into the Governing Council and the different components within APHA, let's talk a little bit about the structure and what the Governing Council does. So the Governing Council is the representative legislative body of the association. I often say that you can think of us as the House of Representatives, since we are representative. Based on our membership distribution. It consists of voting and non-voting members who represent different constituencies within APHA. So each of you serve in a Governing Council role, either ex officio due to a position you have, or representing a membership unit, or being directly elected by your membership unit as a counselor. The APHA Governing Council is composed of 209 voting members. This includes 131 section representatives, 4 from the Student Assembly, 1 from the SPIGs, 53 from the affiliates, and the 20 officers and executive board members who also have a vote on the Governing Council. The ex officio members of the Governing Council, which means those without a vote, but who have voice, include the executive director of the association, Dr. Georges Benjamin, who also serves as the secretary of the council. The chairs of each of the sections. All past presidents of the American Public Health Association serve ex officio without vote, but with voice. Chair of each of the standing committees, representatives from each of the eligible caucuses, as well as the Science, Action, and Education Board chairs collectively as the JPC. Total, that makes for 297 individuals who serve on our governing council. To give you an idea, because I kind of like to know where we rank, we're, APHA is somewhere around the 46th largest representative body, governance body. If you're comparing us to countries, we're right in between Bangladesh, Greece, South Korea, and Malaysia. And you can kind of see the distribution. The United States is 23. China, of course, has the largest at 2,900. So we're a fairly large body when we're all together. And it's exciting when we all are together. The Governing Council also has different boards and committees that report to it. This includes the Nomination Committee of the Governing Council, which is responsible for the identification and nomination of individuals for the position of president-elect, honorary vice presidents, elected members of the executive board, treasurer, and the speaker position. So the Nomination Committee works year-round, really fulfilling a critical duty in identifying the leaders of the association that the Governing Council will vote on. You can see it's composed of 9 Governing Council members, as well as the president and executive director, who are non-voting. Within APHA, we also have several boards. Boards are created by the executive board with the approval of the Governing Council, and each board has a specific purpose and responsibility. The current boards of the association include the Action Board, the Science Board, the Education Board, and the Editorial Board. There we go. We also have several standing committees. Standing committees are those committees which are necessary for effective APHA operations and which often are responsible for internal organizational structure or administrative affairs within the association. Currently, the standing committees of the association and the committees which we receive reports from within the Governing Council include the Bylaws Committee, the Health Equity Committee, the Membership Committee, the Women's Rights Committee, the Joint Policy Committee, and the Nation's Health Advisory Committee. And we highlight these committees and boards to both let you know where you can expect to receive information from and the types of information that comes to the Governing Council, but to also highlight the fact that as you're working within your individual member units or across member units, if you have questions or if you think there is something that we should take on, first we recommend, of course, meeting with the appropriate bodies such as the Intersectional Council, but also reaching out to those committees which may actually be working on those processes or might be relevant to what you're considering. Each of these committees have appointed members and chairs. I do want to highlight, of course, the executive board of our association. The executive board of the association has several duties. These include the primary fiduciary and legal responsibility for the association as defined by Massachusetts and District of Columbia law, as well and they are elected by the Governing Council from the recommendations of the Nominations Committee. If anyone knows why Massachusetts law why APHA, even though it's based in DC, has legal responsibility under Massachusetts law, you should put it in the chat and we can see who knows. And I recommend seeing Article 6, Section 7 of the bylaws for additional information and an additional list of all responsibilities of the executive board. The executive board is composed of elected, ex officio, elected members, ex officio members with a vote, and ex officio members without a vote. Elected members of the executive board include the president, president-elect, the immediate past president, the treasurer, the speaker of the Governing Council, as well as 12 elected members. Ex officio with a vote include the chair of the Council of Affiliates, the chair of the Intersectional Council, and the chair of the Student Assembly. And yes, APHA was first registered in Massachusetts 150 years ago, and we are excited to be heading back home to Boston for our 150th anniversary. Ex officio members without a vote include the chair of the Science, Action, and Education Board, as well as the executive director. As we think of the executive board in relation to the governing council, I know this is one of the major questions that often comes up, like what is the difference between the executive board and the governing council? Well, we've already talked about one, which is the executive board has the primary fiduciary and legal responsibility. But the executive board also comes to the governing council for a variety of reasons. And the relationship between the executive board and the governing council includes that the executive board will recommend methods for the procurement of funds. And this includes recommending the due structure to be approved by the governing council. The executive board will work to confirm to the policy statements adopted by the governing council between meetings. The executive board will prescribe the procedure for membership categories and will work to elect agency members by 3/4 vote and recommend honorary membership for approval by the governing council. The executive board will recommend the establishment of new APHA boards and standing committees to the governing council, as well as establish and appoint special APHA committees and task force with time-limited functions. The executive board will monitor representation within APHA and will transmit a report of its proceedings and transactions to the governing council each year. And then, of course, the executive board endorses the annual proportional representation of section members to the governing council. So we do reappoint our section representatives each year based on the census of the members. Now we're going to transition a little bit into the specific functions of a governing council, and so what you can be expected to do in your role as a member of the governing council. And do keep in mind that for those of you who serve on the governing council, ex officio due to another position, your specific duties will include, of course, those duties as well. So let's talk about the roles of the governing council. And you can identify these roles within the bylaws of the association. So I encourage you to look there. We have also made them available on the website at that link provided. There's a link that says on duties and responsibilities of the governing council, and you can find them there. So the function of the governing council include to adopt policy statements that articulate APHA's position on public health issues and to impact legislation and regulation. And this is one of the critical roles the governing council plays, because these policy statements that we adopt are used in the field of public health to advocate for increased funding. They show up in court, they show up in statements to the court, amicus briefs to the court. They're used to kind of think about what are the future roles of public health. What do we need to address now, but also what do we need to think about in the future? How can we be proactive? And these policy, I really want to articulate that these policy statements are used, they're accessed, and that is why it's so critical that we have a strong policy process in place that ensures that they are based on the best available science and they are sound. But we'll talk more about that in a bit. The governing council also can amend the bylaws by 2/3 vote and adopt rules for the conduct of its own business. And the governing council has often done that. The governing council also approves by 2/3 vote a schedule of dues for association membership, as well as the selection of multiple membership and the affiliated associations based on recommendations of the executive board. The governing council elects the executive board and officers of the association. And through the nominations committee, of course, works to identify leaders for those roles. The governing council has the ability to recognize affiliated associations by a 3/4 vote and to approve the establishment, combination, or discontinuation of sections of the association. Now, The Governing Council also has the ability to approve the establishment or dissolution of boards and standing committees of the association as needed. The Governing Council can, of course, also establish specific committees and task force with specific functions. For example, we currently have, the Governing Council has approved an ad hoc speakers task force on Governing Council engagement and has given us a 1-year period of time to conduct our business. The Governing Council also receives report and acts upon those reports on any recommendations within them from any of the association constituent groups, which include boards, committees, the Council of Affiliates, the Intersectional Council, the Student Assembly, and the Executive Board itself. So when we send you those emails and we tell you reports are posted, you know, we're not doing it because we don't think you have enough to do or enough to read. We're doing it because really, as governing counselors, one of your responsibilities is to remain aware of what's happening, and that these reports, these committees, boards, and groups are reporting as part of their duty to the Governing Council in its role as the governing body of the association. And then, of course, the Governing Council receives at the annual meeting a report from the chair of the Executive Board in which the accomplishments, financial status, and really activities of the association are reported out. And so even though, and these, of course, throughout the year, the minutes of the Executive Board are made available to all governing counselors, and Courtney and I will continue to send that out. In addition, specific requests or information from the chair of the Executive Board or any of their designees, including Executive Board committee chairs, the treasurer of the association, the president of the association, or even the speaker, may be sent out for you to consider prior to a meeting of the Governing Council. The other important critical functions is APHA is a transparent organization, and so the Governing Council approves and makes available to the general membership approved minute meetings of each of its meetings. The Governing Council elects the nominations committee, and the Governing Council also elects honorary members based on the recommendation of the Executive Board. And then finally, there are some additional kind of responsibilities that the Governing Councilors really represent the interests of their member unit to APHA. We are a representative body. So it doesn't surprise me, when example, that someone from the environment section might have a different opinion than someone from the physical activity section, or when someone from the pharmacy section might have a different thought on something we're proposing than someone from the aging and public health section. And I'm just picking on those sections because I know people in them and I'm a member of them. So I know who I might get yelled by, who might yell at me. So really one of the things that's important is that as we're getting together and as we have these debates and as we're working through the agenda, that the interest of your section is represented. And it's critical then that really governing counselors and counselors as a whole should interact with their member unit leadership throughout the year. We encourage counselors to attend all leadership meetings of their unit. If you are not currently attending those meetings, or if it's not been tradition in your unit, let us know, and we're happy to advocate on your behalf. It's important that governing counselors know what is going on throughout the year so that at the annual meeting, the unit's interest is represented. And for us, that's really important because too many times we hear after the fact that like, oh, my unit didn't want this through. Well, your governing council didn't say anything. Governing counselor didn't say anything or didn't bring that up. Or we hear, oh, we actually really wanted to bring this forward or present this. Well, if you're not going through the appropriate channels or your counselors aren't aware that that's something you're interested in, there's not much we can do about it. It's really critical that we use the processes that are in place as they're intended to be used to communicate and in the shared governance of our membership association. And of course, we really recommend that counselors interact with their fellow counselors throughout the year, particularly within their member unit. I think we're doing a much better job, but if for any reason you don't know who the other counselors are within your member unit or your region or your group, reach out to Courtney and I, and we will connect you. We want everyone, we want everyone to feel welcome, to feel connected, to feel engaged, and to recognize the critical role they play in the association. Briefly talking about terms of office, counselors are elected by their interest groups, and you're elected for 2-year terms, and you are eligible to essentially serve for 3 terms or 6 years before you have to take 2 years off. So we do, if we encourage you to run for re-election, but we also encourage that, there's opportunities for others to be engaged and to serve as governing counselors. Essentially, terms of counselor begin and end at the close of annual meetings, as do all APHA leadership appointments for the most part. And then, of course, one of the differences is the terms of the representatives of the affiliated associations, the ARGCs. They follow a procedure based on the terms of the Constitution and bylaws of their organization. And so what this means is we encourage kind of a similar process, but ARGCs may rotate within the regions at a different rate. And they may have longer terms or shorter terms depending on the structure of that particular state affiliate. The bylaws state that the council shall assemble at the time and place of the annual meeting and hold 1-year mid-year meeting. It is possible that other meetings of the council shall be called by the executive director at the request of the president or at the request of any 30 voting councilors. Traditionally, we have met for 1 mid-year meeting in June, as well as at the annual meeting for 3 sessions. As of last year, we changed it somewhat, and we instead met for 2 sessions of governing council activity, and we will be continuing that into this into 2022, where we will, instead of meeting for Saturday evening and then all day on Tuesday, we will instead meet for the Saturday session and a Tuesday morning session. So long as that continues to be feasible, we will move forward like that. We heard from the survey responses that that is what people preferred. This does mean, of course, that we have to be more aware of how we're spending our time and what we're discussing, as well as the fact that some material will be moved to the week preceding, or that some activities may become reports, read reports only. Here are the dates for the upcoming meetings. We will have our mid-year meeting from 2 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. on Monday, June 13th. We have extended the mid-year meeting by 30 minutes after hearing. At the last year mid-year meeting, we had a lot of material and limited time for discussion. It's critical that we have discussion at these APHA Governing Council meetings, and so we have extended the time based on that so that we can ensure that there is discussion time after each bullet point and that everyone is able to be engaged in the process. We will then, of course, meet at the annual meeting as well in Boston. And I'm excited to be back together. It'll be the first time that we've been together physically since I've been speaker. So it will be great to see many of you in person for the first time. The agendas of the Governing Council, this is a question we often get. They are developed by the speaker in consultation with APHA staff, and governing councilors can propose items for the agenda or introduce items during the new business section of the agenda. For the mid-year meeting, the deadline is April 1st for any agenda item to be considered, and we will announce the date for the annual meeting governing council session at the mid-year meeting. There are some additional annual meeting activities. These include the governing council breakouts, and these are reserved for various topics and groups where we really seek the governing council feedback, the counselor feedback as leaders of the association on issues confronting the association, governance, are things that might be going on within the field of public health. Last year, for example, we focused the Governing Council breakout on the APHA Your Way program, where we're looking at the structure of the association and how we might think about ways that it might look in the future and how we can engage members. We also encourage governing counselors to attend the policy hearings, which are open to all members. This is an opportunity to provide input into the review of all policies and late breaker policy statements that will be voted on by the council. And then, of course, also included at the annual meeting is the candidates forum. And these are hosted by various APH bodies, including the Council on Affiliates and the Intersectional Council, and they provide an opportunity to meet the candidates for our APHA office. And we encourage you to attend these activities as well as other opportunities to engage with the candidates so that you can make informed voting decisions. The Governing Council meetings are, of course, open and they may be attended by all APHA members. However, only governing counselors can speak from the floor unless 2/3 of the council votes to extend speaking privileges to a non-counselor. So if for any reason a non-counselor wanted to speak on our floor, they would have to be given permission by the council. We do have a proxy process in place. If you cannot attend a governing council session, you can arrange for a proxy. And a proxy is a current APHA member who is not currently an elected governing counselor. In general, it is the section chairs and the affiliate president who may appoint a proxy. And a proxy is registered for an entire session and can speak and vote. Essentially, if you appoint a proxy, they are taking your place. And it is critical that if you cannot attend a governing council meeting for some reason, that you work with your member unit to appoint a proxy so that your unit is represented. So please inform your member unit early if you know you will need a proxy. A proxy form must be completed ahead of the session, not during the session, not as we're logging on, ahead of the session. We have to process these and ensure that proxies are eligible. The deadline for the proxy form will be sent out early next week for the mid-year meeting, and so that you will have plenty of time to identify someone who may be able to fill that role if you're unable to. Turning gears a little bit, I want to focus on governing council procedure and engagement. The governing council does use parliamentarian procedure, particularly Robert Rules of Order, as well as the association bylaws and governing council policy in our operations. Now, the purpose of parliamentarian procedure is really threefold. One, it's to facilitate the transaction of business. It's to promote cooperation and harmony, and it's to ensure that the minority is respected and heard. So we're not using parliamentarian procedure to be punitive or to attempt to slow down proceedings or anything like that. We're using it to ensure that we are engaging in orderly meetings and that people are able to participate and engage and their voices are not drowned out. We will be hosting we have revised the orientation again, and we'll be hosting a special parliamentarian procedure orientation in early May prior to the mid-year meeting. This will be led by our amazing parliamentarian who has agreed to serve 2 more years, Greg Ulrich, and he serves as my advisor on matters of procedure. He assists us as parliamentary questions arise, either during the meeting or prior to the meeting. He works as an advisor only though, and his advice is non-binding. He's not entitled to vote, make motions, debate, and he cannot address the body. So as parliamentarian procedures come up, our questions come up, I will consult with him and then make informed decisions based on our previous procedures, our history as a body, as well as the advice of the parliamentarian. So sometimes if there is a question raised and I will consult Greg, for his feedback. And he has been a tremendous asset to us, I believe. So thank you, Greg. We continue in our process of, I spoke briefly about an ad hoc task force on governing council engagement. We continue to identify opportunities for governing council engagement outside of the mandated meetings. These include our Speak with the Speaker series. In January, we held one Speak with the Speaker series that focused on introductions, ground settings, ideas for the year. And then in February, we were very lucky to host one with the Joint Policy Committee, which really laid out the policy process and how governing councils can be engaged in that process. I would recommend, if you haven't had the opportunity, you can go back and watch those meetings for additional information. We conduct surveys after each meeting, as well as perhaps throughout the year, depending on the topic, to identify emerging issues or concerns. We also have the Governing Council information page, and we have a Governing Council APHA Connect group so that you can connect with other governing counselors. And it's there that you can find a directory of all governing counselors. And then, of course, we have the Approved Speakers Ad Hoc Task Force, which is looking to identify how we can ensure that best practices among member units are shared and that governing counselors feeling active and engaged throughout the year in their role. All right. We're quickly coming to a close, but based on continued feedback and continued questions, we did want to briefly touch on the policy process, since we know that many of you are actively engaged in that process or have had questions. I do recommend going back to watch the Speak with the Speaker series that was conducted with the JPC in February, as the chairs of the JPC provided excellent information. Essentially, the Governing Council serves to approve APHA policy statements, and these statements are member-developed statements on key public health topics. They only become official APHA policy statements after approval by the APHA Governing Council at the annual meeting. Policy statements, as we've talked about, are critical to our field of public health and the association. They help shape APHA's positions. They are used to write briefs and statements on public health issues. They highlight the latest research on specific public health topics. They're the source of information and reference for the public, including legislative issues. And most critically, they are external to the organization. What does external to the organization mean? External to the organization means that they guide policy outside of APHA. They do not guide internal APHA policy. We recommend that you bookmark this page to stay aware of the status of all 2022 proposed policy statements. The Joint Policy Committee oversees the policy statement development process, and it consists of 12 members from the Science Board, Education Board, and Action Board, and the chairs of each board serve as co-chairs of the Joint Policy Committee. They are charged with overseeing the annual policy statement process. They review and assess, taking into considerations recommendations from the Science Board and APHA membership, all proposed and late-breaking policy statements, and they make the recommendations to the Governing Council at the annual meeting on which policy statements should be adopted. They also, with review by the Science Board, oversee the association's policy statement archiving and review process. The archiving and review process exists to ensure that the best science is always available, and that science that may be outdated is no longer promoted in such a way. However, archive policies are always available for APHA members to review. All right, so proposed policy statements are submitted in February, and this is important because they are submitted in February and the Governing Council often meets to approve them in October and November, which means essentially there is about a 7 to 8 month period of time where the policies are available for review and feedback by the governing counselors. If you are just seeing policies for the first time at the Governing Council, that shouldn't be happening. You should be, we encourage you to review policies early and often because they're submitted in February. They are sent out to member unit and individual comments, and those comments are submitted. In late May, the JPC meets to discuss the policies and the comments and to make recommendations. At this point, the JPC can make 3 recommendations. The first is positive, that it meets policy statement guidelines and it only needs minor changes. The second is conditional, it meets policy statement guidelines, but there are some revisions and re-review required. Are negative, and that it does not meet policy statement guidelines and there are major flaws. Authors are notified of these results in late May. For those who receive a conditional or negative review, they can move forward a revised proposed policy statement, and it must be submitted by mid-August. After the revised statements are submitted, JPC conducts another review of the revised policy statements and make recommendations. The 2 recommendation actions they can take at this point are positive or negative. A positive is a proposal that is ready to move forward to the public hearings, with possibility that there are minor revisions needed prior to the hearings. Are negative, which is when it's recommended that the policy is withdrawn from the review process and it is resubmitted in the next year's policies, the development process. From that, the policies are once again posted and we move to the public hearings and governing council sessions at the annual meeting. Public hearings are held to solicit comments from authors and our members on the revised policy statements. The JPC then meets and determines final recommendations and drafts, and the final drafts of the policies are uploaded. And then, of course, the governing council debates and votes on the proposed policy statements. One of the things to highlight is that there are at least 3 opportunities for governing council and member units to provide feedback, and that the policies are made available 3 separate times throughout the process to the governing council, including one time prior to the debating and the voting. So we wanted to cover that because that's important for us to know, as we often spend a fair amount of our time discussing these policies, and rightfully so. There are some governing council, we've talked about the governing council website, and on this website, you can access the following information, including our schedule, previous actions. All annual meeting material and mid-year meeting material will be posted there well in advance of the meeting so that you can read them. You can access the functions of a governing council minutes, the APHA and the APHA bylaws. This has been a long presentation, I know, and it used to be longer, if you can believe it. But as you have questions, you can email Courtney Taylor at governance@apha.org. Or you can also always feel free to reach out to me at Aaron Guest at asu.edu. Both Courtney and I are here to serve you and to ensure that you feel informed, and that if any questions that you may have prior to fulfilling your duties at the mid-year meeting or the annual meeting have been addressed. As I said, I really view my role as to kind of help shepherd the process along and to ensure that everyone feels active and engaged in their participation in the governance of the association. It's, of course, an honor to serve in this role. And, as I approach, I'm going into my 2nd year, or about to finish my 2nd year, which is, a bit difficult to believe because it just seems like I started, but we, of course, thank you and always welcome feedback. So I want to say thank you to everyone. And then I also want to say that we have a few moments for questions. If you have any questions, if you could please raise your hand and I will turn off my screen share. I will also add that these slides in this recording will be made available to everyone within the next week. Courtney and I will take the recording and send it out. We're always here to help, so please let us know how we can assist you. And then, of course, there will be one additional orientation to parliamentarian procedure that will be a recorded presentation and sent out to you in early May. And I'll just keep an eye. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or type in the chat box. We do have your contact information already. All contact information that you have on file with APHA is submitted when you're elected to the position. So if your contact information has changed for any reason, please update it with APHA so we can have updated contact information. And this is just an aside. It amazes me when I send out an email to the governing council how many bounce backs we receive to this day. And between Courtney and I, we're pretty good at finding out where people end up. But it would be great if everyone could keep their information up to date. I'm not seeing any questions. If anyone has any questions, please let us know. I know, thank you all for sitting through this. I know that this at times can be a bit of a dry topic, but this is all really important information and we all want to make sure that you have access to it because the role that you serve within the association is critical. And so we want to make sure everyone's empowered and informed. And yes, if you won't be able to attend the mid-year meeting, you should work with your member unit to identify a proxy. There is a proxy form that will be sent out within the coming weeks, and we will that will need to be completed by the member unit and the proxy individual. And it generally it will most likely have a deadline in mid-April. Great. Give it one more chance for questions, and you can always email us with any questions or comments. Great. Well, I'm a big believer of not keeping a meeting going longer than we need to. So I want to say thank you all for attending. Thank you all for serving the association in this way. And thank you for everything that you do. And to confirm, yes. So elections for governing counselors is once you can be reelected as a governing council up to 3 terms consecutively, and then you have to take a 2-year break. So the way to think about it is you can serve for 3 terms, you take a term off, and then you can come back. And I hope you enjoy your time enough that you want to come back and you want to keep spending time with us on the governing council. Great. All right. Well, thank you all. Have a great rest of your day. Courtney and I will be sending this recording out and the PowerPoint out along with the links. You'll be able to access all the links from the recording, and I look forward to seeing you all at the mid-year meeting and then seeing you in person in Boston for our 150th. Thank you all.